The Gamelia Foundation, and as you said before, that Barack Obama was an organizer for the Gamelia Foundation, and that's where he got his ability to organize the campaign that he organized in order to become the President of the United States. And that's what they do. They go to the different parts of the country and overseas to organize people and to teach people how to become leaders and teach people how to be better and take charge of their lives. And everywhere we go and wherever we go to a meeting, we organize an action, you know, whether we're fighting for immigration reform, whether we're fighting for transit. We were in St. Louis and they were fighting for revision of the Transit Authority. And so while we were there, a bunch of people got on buses and they went down to the Transit Authority and they rode the train from one point to another. Another time we were up in Connecticut and they got on buses and went to the detention centers fighting about immigration reform. And this year they're coming to Youngstown, so you'll be hearing about an action, and that's where organizing people on one cause, and the key is getting the people out and getting the numbers so that people, just like Property Occupy Youngstown, the more you have, the more of an impact it makes. And the Gamelia Foundation is about teaching people how to be organized in their campaigns for whatever the issues might be.
I'd like to make a comment that I hope is related to the question. I live in Niles, and you can say that that makes me a busybody when I come to Youngstown and Kibitz. On the other hand, I worked for 18 years for legal services in that building on the Federal Plaza that used to be called the Metropolitan Tower, where the Chamber of Commerce presently hangs out. And so I'm going to say something about Youngstown that may seem controversial. I think Youngstown and the Mahoning Valley have lost their way. And here's my capsule history of 1980 to now. In 1980, the last ton of steel was poured in these city limits. We fought it, we lost. The 1980s was the decade of looking for the miracle corporation that would come to town and make everything the way it used to be. Dirigible factories, commuter aircraft. My favorite one was Avanti, where they were going to take the chassis from Lordstown, put a luxury shell around it with non-union labor, and sell it for $50,000. Somehow that didn't go over in Youngstown, Ohio. Then we came to the 1990s, and this is an unproved hypothesis, but I believe that someone in that Chamber of Commerce high up in one of those buildings looked around a table like this one and said, I know what we can do, prisons. And we got the first private prison in the state of Ohio, first big private prison out on Youngstown Hubbard Road. We got the first Supermax prison over on Route 616 that no one pays any attention to because you can't escape from there. We got the Trumbull prison just a little bit south, the federal prison in Columbiana. And then came the decade of the 2000s, where it seems that the program, the perspective agreed on by, on the one hand, the city fathers, on the other hand, Youngstown State University, was a shrinking city. Now, I have never understood that idea. First of all, the city is shrinking anyway. People come to this university, in my opinion, to get the papers that will enable them to leave town. That's what I've experienced as a part-time teacher coming in here and polling students as to their intentions. And where is the shrinking coming from? It seems to be coming not from Boardman, not from Canfield, but from the South Side. And it reminds me of the days when I was a community organizer in New York City, and it used to be said that urban renewal was Negro removal. I don't understand the strategy of just tearing places down without having any idea what you're going to put in their place. I don't know how we expect city blocks to survive if you tear down a bunch of buildings and the city begins to ask the question, can we have snow removal for these few homes that are left, or can we provide street lighting? So I think we need somehow white and black together, but with a lot more imagination and creativity than I've heard up to now, to imagine what not just this neighborhood or this block or this garden, but what this city could still become. Or whether, in fact, we're doomed like the New England textile towns that I remember from my childhood. You lose your big industry, and it's just downhill from there. I think that's our challenge.
I work in a pretty limited scope in neighborhood organizing, and part of what we do is we have a core group of people who are dedicated, and you get other people involved who are interested but don't know how. And then part of our strategy is lobbying downtown for legislative changes. Part of our strategy is to roll up our sleeves and do things in the neighborhood that some people would complain the city is supposed to do. And, you know, there's no point in complaining about that because they don't. But very generally, again, social change in the case of the neighborhood groups that I work with across the city, and especially in my own, seems to be that we focus on a project, we get some success, and we gain some momentum, and meanwhile, while all this is happening, there are people doing things that they didn't think that they could do before. There are people meeting with the mayor who used to think that, you know, the mayor is this guy up on this altar somewhere, maybe in an ivory tower, maybe he has a big long beard and a white robe, they're not really sure. And they're sitting in the room with him, you know, having a face-to-face. And sometimes it's somebody being put in charge of a project that they didn't think they could do before. So I guess the point I'm making is it doesn't speak to an overall social change of attitude toward different groups or seeing things differently, except that individuals become empowered, and I think that that's a necessary part of any sort of social change. And so in our neighborhood group, we like to get people involved and empower them to be able to do stuff, you know, change things for the better, and if somebody gets hit by a bus, there's somebody else there to pick up. And that hasn't always been the attitude or the case with residents in Youngstown. I think we're stopped waiting for our savior and we're starting to do it for ourselves, and that's a big change.